you could change any choices you have ever made, would you? You can always make another choice and change the course of your success. Everyone has the potency to make inspired choices. Get ready to listen, share, and experience the creativity that is you. Now, here is the host of Inspired Choices radio show, holographist coach, Christine McIver.
Welcome, my friends. I am so happy to be with you here today. Whether you are listening live or you're listening to the podcast, which is, of course, in replay, I am grateful for your energies and for choosing to kind of lean in to this topic tonight because it's going to be a good one. And, you know, I've been doing radio and now TV collectively for, I think it's 10 years now. 10 years, actually. I've just passed my 10-year mark. I started in 2011. And you know what's fascinating? And this is so fun that this is coming up right in this second for this show. What is fascinating is I would have never, ever, ever, ever have imagined that I would have had this many areas to talk about, this much knowledge to share with the world in such a way that I chose it again and again and again. I kept choosing to show up and show up and show up. And that's what tonight's about is, are you really choosing to show up? Are you really choosing to show up in your life? And the topic is called, you know much more than you acknowledge. And, you know, it sounds like, oh yeah, that's really cute. But this is a big, big subject that, you know, I've been looking at myself for many, many years, but really diving deeply into in the last little while. Because the one thing that you'll know about me is I know that I'm not fully baked yet. I don't think anybody is ever fully baked. I think that there's still room to grow. There's still room to learn. There's still more knowledge to accumulate and bring into our world to contribute to us and to the world that we contribute to. And this is something that I will continuously be doing. You know, lots of people is like, oh, what's your current book that you're reading? My book, 9 times out of 10, is actually a self-development book because I love them. I just feel like I'm sitting at the buffet table and it's like, okay, which one now? It really does light me up to learn and to continue to grow. And if that's not for you, that's cool. But for me, I know that there's still more and more and more for me to learn to become the best me that I can possibly be, to leave the legacy of the best of who I am, but most importantly, to enjoy and create the best life that I absolutely possibly can. So that's a little bit about me. Now, as you'll know, if you've joined me before, I am a strategic business coach. I work with individuals who are just starting their business, who have been maybe going along for a few years and are looking at growing and are expanding. And I also work with businesses who've been fully established, but it's really time to turn it up. I love to work with businesses. To me, business is absolutely pleasure. And I can't think of a more joyful thing that I get to do than to create business. It for a lot of people, they moan and groan about business. For me, it's like, come on, let's go. And so that's one of the biggest things that I do. I work with individuals as well in the area of self-confidence and in the areas of relationship. And when I'm working with someone, especially like a business owner, what's really important to understand is I'm not just working on your business. I am also working with you because you are the leader of your business. So if you are struggling in some areas, we're not going to be able to grow that business unless we're also expanding you. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, we could do a discovery call and really check in on what is it that you desire with your business. So you can find me at my website, inspiredchoices.ca, or you can just send me an email, Christine@inspiredchoices.ca. And if you are listening live in our on our website, that's fantastic. Or maybe you're listening on our brand new app. I hope that you are. And if you are, I'd love for you to send me a message. You can go right from listening in the app. You can go right over to the shows and you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and you can click the chat room right there. And you can join us right in the chat room, and you can be interacting with the show tonight as you listen. How cool is that, right? Okay, my friends, let's get into tonight's show. So you know much more than you acknowledge. Have you ever considered how much you actually know that you've been ignoring? Have you? Yes, we ignore our own awareness and knowledge all the time. And when we do that, we most certainly do not acknowledge how much we know. The cost of not acknowledging what you really know could be the very currency holding you back from your asks and your desires. Have you ever even imagined that? Have you ever even imagined that? You know, there is there are a lot of amazing, amazing people in the world. There's a lot of very gifted people that can support you to grow. Like myself, I'm a coach. I absolutely have things that I can contribute to my clients and my customers, but that does not negate what they know. I always lean in and pull on what they know by asking them questions. But here's the really big thing is when we are not acknowledging that we know what we're looking to discover, we actually cut off receiving. We cut off receiving that knowledge. It's so critical. This is a very critical place. Like when you're kind of starting out in your business or you're really starting out on your self-discovery journey, you're going to naturally, for most people, they're going to seek outside of themselves. They're going to look to spiritual leaders. They're going to look to business leaders. They're going to look to professionals that, you know, have had their mark out there in the world for some time. There's nothing wrong with that. As you heard me say, I am always looking and reading the self-development. Pardon me, one second. Thank you. But in addition to looking outside of you and listening to what other people are sharing with you, it is critical. It is critical that you ask yourself some questions when you are reading something, when you're in a class, you're learning, when you're getting some guidance, when you're maybe getting a reading from someone. Here is a question that is so, so important is that true for me? Now, in asking that question, when someone's sharing information with you, a follow-up question could be, well, what is true for me? What is true for me? And allow yourself to receive what you know. So if you have been in a body at least once and you're at least 40 to 50 years old, you have had a lot of information come your way. Thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of information. And whether you are consciously or subconsciously receiving that information, you are receiving that information. And so you have a lot of information to access. And when you are accessing that information, you will get the truth about you. This is a really important piece that you want to start to lean into, because how many times are you going to be giving your authority to someone else, right? We need to be leaning in and asking the truth about what we know. But the bigger piece in all of this is acknowledging what we know. We have to acknowledge our capacities. We have to acknowledge our knowing. Knowing is different than knowledge. Knowledge is studying a book, right? Knowing is that confirmation, that instantaneous confirmation that you receive within your body. You get a gut reaction. You get a hell yes. And that hell yes, when you first begin acknowledging, sometimes, oftentimes actually, is a very quiet hell yes. It's a very, very quiet acknowledgement of, yes, this is true for me. Why is that, Christine? Well, let me tell you. The reason for that is because you have spent lifetimes and certainly years and years in this embodiment looking for confirmation outside of you often. All right. And so you've kind of buried yourself in judgments, and you've buried yourself in expectations that you don't have it within you. It's outside of you. So when you are not having flexed that muscle of acknowledgement, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. Here's a really cool example. Have you ever thought of someone, and then the phone rang? Has that ever happened to anyone before? It definitely occurs all the time with me. Now, is that a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. And that's the part where you want to begin to acknowledge your awareness. Begin to acknowledge what you know. Now, imagine when you start to acknowledge something that simple, and you start to practice that and practice that ability again and again, that skill becomes an asset for you. It becomes an asset for you in your entire life. It can become an asset for you in your business. It can become an asset for you in your relationships. It can become an asset for you in critical moments, right? And this is not about judgment. This is not about judgment. This is not about things that you like or you don't like, things that you believe or you don't believe. This is about your knowing. This is a deep-seated awareness that's within you that you maybe have subconsciously stored away without cognitive awareness. And when you have that knowing and you start to trust that knowing, things start to change in your world. But the big piece is that acknowledgement. The acknowledgement takes you to a different level. Acknowledgement takes you to another level of expertise. And who are you the expert of? Who do you want to become the expert of? You want to become the expert of you. And why do you want to become the expert of you? Because no one is ever going to know the truth about you more than you. Absolutely no one. All right? And this has nothing to do with psychics. This has nothing to do with people who are seers. This has nothing to do with mediums. This has nothing to do with anyone that has any of these types of psychic abilities. We all have psychic abilities, by the way. But this is different. To know about you, to have the knowledge of you, and to really become an expert of you takes your life to an entirely new level. Now, we're going to go for our break shortly. And when we get back, I want to lean in more into and give you some examples around just acknowledging and why we don't acknowledge this, why we hold ourselves back, and why we keep tripping ourselves up into the same patterns over and over again, which keeps us locked in the continuously seeking outside of ourselves. Okay? You are listening to your host, Christine McIver, here on the Inspired Choices show on the Inspired Choices Network. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on our past experiences or what others believe. What would our lives be like if we made our choices based on what we desire for our futures? When you join Inspired Choices radio show with holographist coach Christine McIver, you'll be provoked to look at what is true and what you know but may not choose that requires your attention. Christine does not hold back and brings all her expertise during each and every show. Are you ready to create the life and the living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show. every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Inspired Choices Show with holographist coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@inspiredchoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Again, if you're listening live, I'm thrilled to have you here. And if you're listening to the replay, I'm so thrilled that you chose to lean into and to play it. So tonight we're talking about you know much more than you acknowledge. And in our first segment, we talked about when you are not acknowledging that we know what we're looking to discover, we're actually cutting off receiving. We're cutting off receiving future possibilities of our knowledge. We truthfully are shutting down the gates. So we have these gates within us that we want to have wide open to receive what we know. And the key to open those gates is actually your acknowledgement that you know. And you may not know right now in these 10 seconds in your head, but somewhere within you, you know what is true for you and what will actually begin to create what it is that you desire. We have to acknowledge our capacities. We have to acknowledge our knowing in order to grow them. We have to, right? So why do we, as I said in this segment, I wanted to talk about why do we stay stuck in this perpetual place of seeking outside of ourselves and doubting ourselves and questioning ourselves. You know, there's a great deal of that goes on for each and every one of us. And I'll tell you why. This is so important to understand, to really have the knowledge around how your brain works, how your physiology works. Because when you understand that it's a program, that you have programmed yourself, that will give you it'll give you the confidence that you can change it. And that's key, my friends. That really, really is key. You know, if you've ever had a time in your life where you have felt insecure, where you have felt lacking, where you have felt not good enough, and I would barter that 90% of people absolutely would have felt like that at some time in their lives. Any kind of those emotions or those feelings, all right, that you have, they are stored in your body and in the neural pathways in your mind. Your mind, my friend, your mind has been programmed by your experiences. Your mind has been programmed by those around you. Your mind has been programmed by the events in your life. And so those programs, if you had trauma in your life, if you had abuse in your life, if you had unkindness, if you had just crappy outcomes happen in your life, those are programmed within you. It's not that you chose to have those happen. It's that they are programmed within you. Okay. And once something is programmed within you, it starts to go on the repeat wheel, the repeat wheel, the repeat wheel. And if it goes on it long enough, it goes from your brain into the cells of your body, right? So when you think a thought and you think that thought enough, you start to have an emotional response, a feeling from that. And that when you start to receive a feeling about something, that is your ticket to know that those thoughts are now stored in the cells of your body, because your body feels. All right. Your body feels. So when you are having feelings, they're stored within your body. Okay. So then what happens is you're going along in your life, and maybe you had a really bad experience over here, and 10 years passes, 20 years passes, and you have a similar situation, or some kind of trigger comes up. Maybe someone that was unkind, you see an image of them, or you hear somebody talk about their name, or something that triggers that. Well, what happens is your body then goes and it pulls that feeling forward into this present moment in time. And then you start to replay that loudly in your head, in your emotions, because you're feeling this in your body. You've wakened those cells up. This is what happens. Okay? So if you ever had an experience that you were not intelligent, or somebody ever said that you were stupid or you didn't know anything, right? If on any level you doubted that they were wrong or that they were not wrong, or you bought any of that because maybe you were insecure, you were young and you didn't understand what was actually occurring, you've stored those in your body. And then when you go to really look at what do I know, when you go to look at what do I know, those old feelings will come out extremely quickly and extremely easily. And you can have that same experience again and again. All right. Your brain is your storage unit. Your brain is your storage unit. You store all sorts of things in your brain. And then as you repeat and repeat, you store it in your body. So you get to, so what actually happens is you keep accessing this experience again and again, and you repeat the same outcome. This is for the same thing for everyone. Now, when you become very consciously aware, of oh, what just happened? Like, let's say you're normally in most of the things that you do quite confident. And then all of a sudden you've experienced this insecurity. When that comes up, at that moment in your life, you may be leaning in more and more to being conscious of what is actually occurring with you. One of the questions that I often ask my clients is, when they tell me about something that they chose to do, and whatever the outcome was, quote unquote, good or bad, I will ask them, so tell me what your experience of you was, not your experience of this situation. Because what we want to do in that question, what I'm asking them to do, is to really become aware of what is occurring within their mind and their body. I want them to get so in touch with who they are choosing to be that they get a very strong experience of their experience. I hope this is making sense. Because when you can kind of step back and go, wow, I'm really anxious right now, or wow, I'm really angry right now. When you can be in that space, that's when things can start to really change, because you are incredibly in your conscious state of being. You're choosing to become incredibly aware and incredibly present with what is occurring within you. Now, you may be aware, kind of like you're back here, aware of what's going on. And what is actually occurring is maybe you're very angry, or maybe you're very anxious, or maybe you're very sad. And you're in your feelings, you're in the occurrence, but you're back here watching what is going on for you. When you are in that state of being, when you can acknowledge what you are experiencing from outside of the experience itself, then you can start to know what you know. So let me give you an example. When I started really on my spiritual journey, which was about 2007, 2008, I got together with a group of women, and there was a spiritual leader in this group, and she was teaching us about our psychic abilities. Basically, that was what was going on in the class. And we met every week for, probably like a year and a half. And during this time, when we would meet, I was incredibly insecure with my psychic abilities. Like, when I say incredibly insecure, I'm not even kidding. I thought, I just don't have it. I just don't have it. These women have it. I don't have it. And that I was convinced of this. Hang on a second. Excuse me. Now, where did that stem from? Where did that stem from, that I felt I didn't have this ability? You have to go back even farther. And you have to go back to a time in grade school for me. That was my first encounter of feeling like I really was unintelligent, that I did not have abilities like other people, that I was quote unquote stupid. I bought the lie that I was stupid by the way I was treated by a teacher. 2 years in a row, actually, he told me that I was not doing well, and that if I didn't do well in the next semester, that I was going to be pulled back to the previous year. And he told me that 2 years in a row. Years later, came to find out that he was a very abusive person who was also abusing drugs, and he was incredibly, incredibly unkind. But at the time, for this girl who was insecure, it really hit me hard. It was a very, very difficult thing for me, and I carried that lie with me for many years. Many, many years. I carried that lie with me for at least 30 years, if not more. Be careful what you say to a young child, because until they can actually be at the stage of questioning you, and please don't ridicule a child who questions, because they need to be able to do that. We in my generation for sure did not. We were told to just listen to our elders, listen to your elders, be respectful, but also choose your voice. And I'm glad to know that that's happening more and more in the world. But I didn't question what he said. I didn't even talk to other people about it because I was embarrassed. And I think he counted on that. And then I carried that with me all the way through the rest of grade school, all the way through high school. I took it to college with me, and I constantly was trying to hide the fact how insecure I was. And I could do some things really, really well. I could work with my hands with things really, really well. But I bought the lie that I was not intelligent as far as reading, that I was poor at reading, that I was poor at studying. And so I did whatever I could to hide this from other people, because I bought that as true as well. And so fast forward to when I started on my spiritual journey, and I was with these people and these other amazing women, and they were receiving awarenesses. And because I didn't acknowledge my intelligence, I didn't acknowledge even the little things, I wasn't able to actually know what I actually knew. And honestly, everything is closed off when you're in that space of insecurity and you're not even looking for one thing that you can acknowledge, that grows and grows and grows. And so because of this, and I was with this group of women for so long, I was absolutely 100% convinced that I had no intuition, that I had no psychic abilities. I bought that lie, and that cost me. That cost me the experience of enjoying me and enjoying creating my life in a way that was joyful. And my friends, that's what this show is about tonight, because I really want you to know that you know way more than you've ever acknowledged. And when you allow yourself to begin to lean in and acknowledge what you do know, everything starts to change. So we are up to our second break of the show. We're going to take our break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about how you can begin to use some really simple ways of acknowledging and growing your knowledge of you. Stay tuned, my friends. You're listening to Inspired Choices with myself, Christine McIver, here on the Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on our past experiences or what others believe. What would our lives be like if we made our choices based on what we desire for our futures? When you join Inspired Choices radio show with holographist coach Christine McIver, you'll be provoked to look at what is true and what you know but may not choose that requires your attention. Christine does not hold back and brings all her expertise during each and every show. Are you ready to create the life and the living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you ready to have pleasure with your business? Yes, I said pleasure with your business. The Pleasure of Business a la carte will surprise you with topics like meet yourself in the boardroom, money, services, and you. Expand your visibility. The pleasure of communication. The pleasure of Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Christine McIver has so much pleasure with business and loves teaching all things business. Beginning a new business? Desiring to expand a current business? Or looking to resurrect a business that has been dormant? This program will get you fired up and bring more pleasure than you have ever imagined. Exhausted with your excuses for not creating a phenomenal business? Join now for all the pleasure with business. Pleasure of Business a la carte gives you total choice for what you desire and what your business requires. That's 24 weeks of different topics to choose from with weekly calls, audio and video recordings, and PDFs. This class will have you dive right in and use tools to create the business that has been speaking to you. Go to inspiredchoices.ca for full details or join the Facebook page Pleasure of Business a la carte. Now is the time for you and your business.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Inspired Choices Show with holographist coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@InspiredChoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Hello, my friends. I'm so grateful that you are here. And we are going to dive right back into this show in just a minute. You know, in the area of acknowledging what you know, I wonder what you know that you're such a specialist in that you would like to bring your voice to the world. Here at Inspired Choices Network, we love to have people bring their voice to the world, their conscious voice to the world, to be an evangelist for their topics and to share it with the world. What I've known from the moment that I ever started actually doing radio 10 years ago now and producing as well is that every single solitary person has a voice that needs to be shared. There's something that each and every one of us knows that someone else does not know. And in the whole vein of talking about acknowledging, when we begin to acknowledge and we lean in to what we know, it grows exponentially. That's one of the biggest gifts that I've ever received from having my own show, is that it actually made me show up. And a lot of people do their shows, they pre-record their shows, and then they edit their shows a great deal. That's the way most people do podcasts. I'm incredibly grateful that my experience started out in live shows that turned into podcasts, because what that has done for me is that has actually challenged me to show up and to really know what I know and to lean into receiving more of me and lean into receiving more of my awareness that I have not been acknowledging. It's actually one of the greatest gifts of having this show, and certainly a gift that I've had many of our hosts acknowledge as well, that it's turned them into trusting themselves more and more, expanding their awareness more and more, and being willing to share that awareness and that voice with the world starts to contribute to other people over and over and over again. One of the sayings that I always said is, the conversation does not truly begin until you add your voice to it. And when you add your voice to the conversation of whatever it is that you absolutely are passionate about, that you really, really see it needs to be contributed in the world, you start to change our world. And our world certainly desires to have a lot more love and kindness and consciousness. And no matter what that topic is, I'd love to hear from you. You can email info@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, and we're looking for some very special people to join our network. So if you think you have what it takes, or you know someone that you think would be brilliant, that you always love listening to or love having conversations with, reach out, because the world definitely desires to have some amazing voices bringing their consciousness forward. Okay, let's get back into tonight's show. So we were talking about you know much more than you acknowledge. And during our last segment, we were talking about somewhere within you, you know what's true for you and what it actually is that creates what you desire. You know it. You know it, but it's been buried because of your past experiences. You've buried that knowing deep, deep under you. And what is really required is for you to acknowledge the lie that you don't know. You are a miracle. Every single one of us, we are miracles, and we all have intuitive abilities. We all know. You just get this gut reaction. Like you know. Now, you maybe have never been told, or you've maybe never discussed this with someone of how you have those abilities, but we all have those abilities. I remember as a small child walking home from school, and I lived in the country, so there was only one other family down another road that had children. So I would be walking usually by myself home, and there would be very few people ever around. And as I would be walking home, and it was like maybe a block away from the school, maybe not even that far, and as I would walk towards my driveway, and I would, just as I would see the house, and whether there was cars there or however many cars or trucks were there or whatever, my father had a construction business, I knew I would get a really heavy feeling in my stomach, and I would get uncomfortable. And what that was is I had an awareness that something not wonderful was going on. You see, my father he was an amazing man that I adored, and wow, that he left us too early, way too early. And he was someone who had the biggest heart of gold, and he would contribute to people. He contributed to people so much that when he passed away, people came to his funeral and the lineups just went on forever, and people would come forward and tell us about the kindness that he contributed in their world. But what my father didn't know how to do was to actually ask for a contribution. He was always giving, but never receiving. And that turned into resentment. He felt alone, but he did not have the skills or the tools to know how to talk about it, to know how to share that, to ask for support, to ask for the love that he really, really required. And what what is so important to know is that he dealt with his stuff by drinking, and he had a drinking problem. He drank to the point that it impacted his world and his family's world. And growing up as a young girl, it was he didn't drink 24/7. It was, he would only drink occasionally, but when he did, it was a 3 or 4 day affair. And then the impact after that drinking binge would last for, months. And out of that would become a lot of struggle and a lot of hurt and pain. So when I would walk home from school and I would look at my home, and whenever I got this feeling in my stomach, I knew something was up. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't acknowledge that I had intuition. And when I say this to you, it's because I didn't know what intuition was. I was never educated with knowing what that was. And I didn't do anything with that information. It was years and years later when I started to look at when did I first know, and that was one of my very first acknowledgments of actually a very strong gut reaction that I knew something that I didn't know that I knew. And so I'm telling you this because every single one of us, we have knowing. We know, but we don't know that we know. And if you could begin to acknowledge when something occurs, even if you don't believe it initially, it's going to start to change it. So let's go back to the phone call. Let's go back to the phone call situation. So you think of somebody in your mind, and then within 5 minutes, they call. All right. What I really want to invite you to do is I want you to say, even if you don't believe it right away, I want you to say to yourself, I knew they were going to call. I knew they were going to call. And as you start to do that, as you start to acknowledge these things, right? As you start to acknowledge some little things, right? You will start to open those gates up to receiving more and more of your knowing. Your acknowledgement is key. If you can imagine, acknowledgement is kind of like the thing that breaks the concrete. It's the jackhammer on the concrete that you have wrapped around yourself, around your knowing because of your experiences. And acknowledgement is so cool because as you start to do this, guys, it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. It's so much fun. And so when you actually start to look at what do I desire, and you start to ask yourself questions around, okay, so maybe if you're a business owner, maybe you say, what should I be charging for this service, right? You will start to, if you've been flexing that muscle of intuition and acknowledgement together, when you start to ask these questions, you will start to get awarenesses. And so you may get an awareness that, okay, so should I charge $75 for this? And you might get no kind of physical change in your body, no kind of awareness will drop in. And then maybe you say, should I charge $100 for this? And again, there's nothing going on. And then maybe you say 150 and all of a sudden you get an excitement or you start to giggle. There's all sorts of different ways that you can receive your acknowledgement from your body. But that is so cool as you start to play with this. This becomes your tool. This becomes the way that you can do this. This becomes the way that you can start to actually be your best friend, your own psychic, to create your world. And this works with relationships. This works with all areas of your life and your body and your relationships and your money and your business, everything. It creates so much ease in your world because you don't have to sit there and continue to have doubt breed around you continuously in everything that you are doing. Now, this is not to say that playing and working with other people isn't fun and isn't also a contribution, because you can get awarenesses when you're speaking to other people as well. But the key is to begin to acknowledge what you know and then watch the floodgates start to pour open. That's why I say you know more than you're willing to acknowledge, because most of us are not acknowledging even half as much as we know. And these are the people that work in the area of even teaching psychic abilities. So we are up to already, I can't believe it, up to our final break of the show. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the abilities, about what you can do to play with acknowledging and how you can start to really create the world that you're desiring to have and be in. So you're listening to Christine McIver on the Inspired Choices show on the Inspired Choices Network. Stay tuned, my friends. We'll be right back.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on our past experiences or what others believe. What would our lives be like if we made our choices based on what we desire for our futures? When you join Inspired Choices radio show with holographist coach Christine McIver, you'll be provoked to look at what is true and what you know but may not choose that requires your attention. Christine does not hold back and brings all her expertise during each and every show. Are you ready to create the life and the living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Inspired Choices Show with holographist coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@InspiredChoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
My friends, did you know that we were coming back? Did you acknowledge that you knew this? How much fun are you willing to actually have with growing your awareness? And how much fun are you willing to have in acknowledging your awareness? So in our last segment, we were talking about somewhere within you, you know what's true for you and what it actually is that will create what you desire. You know, one of the greatest ways to tap into what you know is to actually ask more questions, right? So I love watching mystery shows. Like I love like detective shows and things like that. And I've been doing this for years. Okay, now I'm telling on myself. I've been doing this for years. is when something will occur, I'll say out loud, even if I'm by myself, I'll say out loud, oh, what's going to happen is she's going to slap him right across the face. And I am telling you, 75 to 80% of the time, I'm correct. Now, you can put that off to whatever you want to say. Oh, yeah, it's because they standardly do this or that or whatever. It doesn't matter. I like it. It's fun for me, and it strengthens my acknowledgement muscle. When I am saying these things and acknowledging, oh, I know what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And it happens. I go, I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. And so the more that you play with this and you have fun with this, the easier and easier this becomes. How cool is that, right? Like, to actually, can you imagine having fun and then having this acknowledgement grow and grow and grow just because you're willing to have fun? You know what, my friends? Life is supposed to be fun. You came here to have joy. That was the entire purpose, was to come and have joy and to grow as well. And you can have both, but you've actually got to be willing to choose it. Are you actually willing to know what you know? Are you willing to know what you know? Or is it more comfortable to live in that space of, oh, I don't know. I don't know. We all have, I'm sure you've heard about archetypes. There is the archetype of the victim, and it's easy to go into that space. We've all had that archetype within us. We've all had those experiences. It feels nice to be comforted by somebody when we're there. But when you play there too much, again, you just cover yourself up with your knowing. How about you start to have fun and you start to acknowledge what you actually know? That will create more and more of the things that you desire in your life to come forth. Because when you are asking questions and when you are asking for your big desires in life, and you actually ask things like, I wonder what choice I should make today to create that. What would really be a contribution to me? What will help to have that grow? What will help to create these desires that I have? When you start to ask those questions and you acknowledge, oh, I just got an awareness to do this, or I got an awareness to do that, just write them down and choose to do one, and then watch what starts to come again and again and again. This is where you can grow and have pleasure in growing that, right? Have you decided that life is hard? Then it's going to be. So acknowledge that you actually knew that was going to be hard. It's your choice, my friends. It's always your choice on what you desire to have and the choices that you are making to create them. Regardless of whatever you choose, I really do hope that you begin to acknowledge the brilliance that you have within you, that you begin to start to look to yourself as the expert on you. If you ever go to the doctor and the doctor says there's nothing wrong, please be your own advocate. Say, yes, there is something wrong. I know there's something wrong. And don't give up on you. Don't give up on that little girl or that little boy that knew what she knew, that knew what he knew, and then started to really get it snuffed out because of other people's really strong judgments and points of view. There's a lot of that going on in the world, especially now. There always has been, though. But there's always been this ability to know what you know, and to start to lean into acknowledging that will start to turn that up and create that life that you absolutely desire deep within you. Turn up your desires and allow your questions to bring forth awarenesses, and then acknowledge those awarenesses. Play with these things. Play with, I'm gonna drive to the store and I'm gonna get a parking spot very close to just as close as I did last time to the store. And when you do go, I knew that was going to happen. Even if the last 2 times when you said it didn't, that doesn't matter. Play with this and start to strengthen these muscles, because that's where you start to open up and you're willing to receive what you know. When you don't trust you, that's really you saying, I'm not willing to receive more of me. Okay, my friends, come on back next week. We've got another hot show planned for you to really bring you forth in your life and to have more fun than you've ever had before. Remember, until next time, you can always make another choice. Bye, my friends.
Thank you for choosing to listen to Inspired Choices Radio Show. Christine McIver will return next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, be willing to choose what you really desire. This is your life, making the choices that bring you all that you desire.